Welcome to the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office. We prepared this presentation because during the COVID we're unable to meet in person. This is a webinar on the Sheriff's Real Estate Auctions. I want to remind everyone that this webinar is for information purposes only, and it does not constitute legal advice, and that the images of the homes are shown for illustration purposes only. The Sheriff's Auctions of Real Estate are held every Thursday, except for legal holidays, at noon at the Civil District Court building at 421 Loyola Avenue. The properties are advertised every Wednesday, at least 30 days prior to the sale, in the Advocate and the Louisiana Weekly. There are basically three types of sheriff sales: seizure sales, court-ordered sales, and government sales. Our primary focus today is going to be on seizure sales, although we do have court-ordered sales, which are mostly partition sales, and we very rarely have government sales. When we're talking about seizure sales, there are two basic types: executory process, which comes from a writ of seizure and sale. This is also known as a quick take legal process for defaulted mortgages. So when someone doesn't pay their mortgage, the mortgage company, the creditor, the bank is allowed to use a quick take legal process, and then the court orders the sheriff to sell the property at auction. The second type of seizure is a judgment, or a writ of FIFA. This is where a court grants a money judgment to the plaintiff, and sometimes a mortgage is involved, but most of the time it's the result of a judgment secured by the plaintiff. And we'll talk more about that later. Now, what a seizure sale does is it transfers the debtor's ownership interest, meaning that if the debtor had a good title, then you have a good title when you purchase it. It also wipes out all of the inferior liens. So any other claims or encumbrances on the property would be wiped out. And any superior liens are also paid off. And any superior liens, like a first mortgage, if we're foreclosing on a second mortgage, would be paid off. And basically, when you come to a sheriff's auction, you don't pay any closing cost. You pay that price, and that's all you pay. Now, what a seizure sale doesn't do, it does not ensure clear title. It does not have a warranty as to the condition of the property. So to exercise your due diligence, you have to view the property first. All of the city sales that are going up for auction, by definition, are going to be blighted properties. These properties are going to require cleanup, repair, or demolition, and sometimes extensive repairs. Why is bidding on mortgages that have been seized on safer? Generally, failed mortgages have title insurance. And in those cases, it's usually a bank or a mortgage company that is the plaintiff. How do you know that? You can look at the title of the case. And in the title of the case, it will say this bank versus the lender, the borrower rather. So what we do is we lean upon the title research that the bank did when they made this loan, and it's usually a pretty good indicator that the title is good. Now, in city sales, there is no lender. So you read the title of the case. Here we have Deutsche Bank versus the defendant. Tells you that the bank has done some legal research onto the title, and the title is probably good. Now, what is the sheriff's role in seizure sales? So the sheriff, after he gets the writ from the court, obtains mortgage and conveyance certificates to detect judgments, mortgages, liens, which have occurred while the debtor owned the property. The sheriff pays out of the auction proceeds any of those superior liens and taxes, and then cancels any liens that are inferior. And that means that you basically have a property with no encumbrances. However, as a legal matter, the sheriff does not ensure clear title, which is why it's important sometimes to rely on those mortgage and those title insurance that they get. Now, I'm going to be very repetitive throughout this presentation. One of the things that we repeat a lot is due diligence. Due diligence is very important. Due diligence is the care used to review the property and its title ownership before you bid on it. Due diligence varies from person to person. For someone with a lot of disposable income, their due diligence might not be as much as someone who is on a tight budget. But anybody's due diligence requires that you not purchase a property at auction unless you go see it in person first. So don't rely on a picture and then start bidding. So you view the property first. Here's a property that we have, actually did put up for auction. That's the view from the street. And when you get a little closer, you can see there's not too much in the back of it. So that's why you do due diligence. You don't just rely on the picture, you look at the entire property. That's the picture from the street, and that's a closer look. Another thing about due diligence, as I said, never buy merely from viewing the pictures. The pictures could be wrong, the pictures could be outdated. The more you bid, the more due diligence you should take. That's pretty simple. The more money you're going to spend, the more you should spend some time looking at the property and finding out as much as you can about the property. In sheriff sales, a deed transfers the title when a successful bidder pays the full auction bid. General rules at the bidding process. When we advertise a property, most of the time it's going to be advertised that you have to have 10% down. This initial 10% that you have to present at the time of the auction has to be in your possession. Can't be in an ATM, can't be anywhere else. And that initial 10% deposit has to be cash, cashier's check, certified check, money order. And we want you to make that certified check, cashier's check, money order payable to yourself. And then that way you can endorse it over to the sheriff's office. You can bid in increments of $100 or more as a courtesy to other bidders. We don't accept personal checks, corporate checks, or credit cards for the 10% deposit. And the balance is due within 30 days. And when you pay the balance, you can pay in checks. So, question often asked is, how much money should I bring to the sheriff's auction? Simple answer is bring 10% of what you're prepared to bid. No change is given if your check is more than 10%, but that change would be applied to the purchase price. Who should you make it out to? Make that certified check, cashier's check out to yourself. You can then endorse that check over to the sheriff's office. The law allows a creditor to credit bid. So that means that if you're bidding against a creditor, the creditor is the person who holds that mortgage. They can bid up to their interest in their property without having to put up the 10% deposit. As long as they don't exceed the amount of money that's owed to the creditor. If they exceed the amount owed, then they have to put up 10% just like everyone else. And that's going to be very important. Here's a scene of the actual auction, how it's run. Lately, we've been doing them in the breezeway between Civil Court and the City Council chambers. When the auctioneer starts the bidding, he is going to make, or she will make, special announcements. Please pay close attention to those special announcements. Sometimes the announcements are regarding taxes and prior adjudications. Sometimes the announcements are about the description of the building. For example, a condominium unit might be advertised in a picture of the building where the condominium unit is contained, but we're not selling that whole building, we're only selling a unit within the building. One of the announcements that we make sometimes is about redeemable tax sales. So if someone hadn't been paying their mortgage note, chances are maybe they weren't paying their taxes, and if their taxes were sold to the city, then if we're still in that redeemable tax period, then we can redeem the sale, but we want the buyer to be aware of that. Here's an example of a condominium unit being sold, not the entire building, but of course the picture may show the entire building. When we advertise a property and when we auction the property, we will frequently say whether the sale is with appraisal or without appraisal. And that has nothing to do with whether the property has been appraised. It has nothing to do with the value of the property. What it means is that the creditor is reserving his right to pursue any deficiencies in the amount due that's owed by the debtor that comes from the sale. In other words, if the debtor owes more money than the property gets auctioned off for, then the creditor can go after the original debtor. And when a sale is sold with appraisal, the opening value has to be 2/3 of the appraised value. So for example, if the appraised value is $100,000, 2/3 of that, $66,666.67 would be the opening bid. When it's sold without appraisal, the opening bid is the sheriff's costs plus all superior claims and the sheriff's commission. So without appraisal, the sheriff's cost may be about a $3,000 superior claims, if any, and you add that together with the sheriff's commission, and that would be the opening bid. An exterior appraisal is what we mean when we say with appraisal and without appraisal. This is not an appraisal where we look at other values of the property in the neighborhood very closely, where we prepare a document that memorializes that. Exterior appraisals are sometimes called windshield appraisals. Drive by, take a look at the property, get an idea roughly of what it's worth, and then that's what gets turned in. The plaintiff and the defendant have the legal right to submit each their own appraisal. And of course you can understand that because the defendant wants to make sure that his debt is paid off, he's going to try to make that appraisal as high as possible. The plaintiff, because they're owed the money, they might want to make that appraisal as low as possible. And if they're too far apart, then the sheriff has to appoint an independent appraiser to make an appraisal of the property as a referee. Now, we talked a lot about seizure sales. Now we're going to talk about a writ of FIFA sales or judgment sales. A writ authorizes the sheriff to obtain a satisfaction of a judgment in debt or damages. Lots of times when people get in disputes with other business partners or with family, they might reduce it to a judgment. If they can't pay that judgment, then the court will say seize their property and sell it, and they'll direct the sheriff to sell it. So sometimes these properties are secured by a mortgage. Most of the time it's the judgment that's being seized upon. Now we talked about the second type, court-ordered sales or partition sales. A court-ordered sale is a sale in which the sheriff is ordered by the court to sell property that's co-owned by two or more individuals. Could be a succession, could be a divorce, it could be a business partnership, and that way, instead of them having to split up a house, then the judge can say, we'll split up the money. We've seen lately that in order to quiet tax sale properties, maybe they couldn't locate all of the other heirs, that people that bought property at tax sales are now coming to have court-ordered sales to quiet their title. In a partition sale, joint property is sold and the money proceeds are divided among the co-owners. City blighted property sales are an example of a judgment sale. What the city does is they first determine that a property is blighted, and that determination of blight is pursuant to state law. As you can see, it's Louisiana Revised Statute 13, Section 25, $75. They hold a hearing, and at the hearing, they levy a fine. The city takes that fine, brings it to court, and reduces it to a judgment by the court when it's not paid. And the city, by operation of law, is granted a first lien privilege on that property. And they then ask the court to direct the sheriff to sell the property at public auction. Now, these city blighted property sales are not like the city tax sales. There is no redemption period. Blighted property sales are sales under the writ of FIFA. They're not foreclosures. There's no mortgage. So there is no mortgage lender involved most of the time. Now the city and the sheriff's office will do their best to make sure that all of the property owners have been notified. But again, there's no borrowed titles research for the buyer to rely on. And that seizure is based on that judgment. When we do city blighted property, the opening bid is going to be at 2/3 of the appraised value. At a second sale, if it doesn't go at the first sale, then we'll go at sheriff's cost. The bid is 10% down, just like with seizure sales. And again, just like with seizure sales, it has to be cash, cashier's check, money order, that 10% deposit. Again, with seizure sales, make that check payable to yourself, and then you can endorse it over to the sheriff's office. No corporate checks, no credit cards, no personal checks. Bidding at a second sale, sometimes the first sale doesn't go on city blighted property, and if it's reoffered at a second sale, then the property is not sold at 2/3. It's sold, the opening bid is going to be at sheriff's cost. Now, after you've done the bid, after you put your 10% down, what is needed to complete the sale? Well, we need to get your name, your address, phone number, marital status. The name the deed's going to be put in, and then you have to pay the final balance. When you pay the balance, we don't want the money in cash. We'd rather you present a check payable to the sheriff's office for that remaining balance. And this could be in the form of a personal check or a corporate check. But of course, we're going to make sure that that check clears, and that could delay the preparation of the deed. Here's a brief summary. We talked about seizure sales. Seizure sales always secured by a mortgage. We talked about the writ of FIFA, sometimes secured by a mortgage, most of the time by a judgment. In both of those sales, we release the inferior judgment in the liens. In a court-ordered sale, second one, partitions sales, a good example. These are sales that out of successions, divorces, and other court cases. And very importantly, these sales do not release inferior judgments and liens. So you take the property subject to all of the judgments that have been recorded against it. And government sales, the sale of state lands, again, those also don't release inferior judgments. These newspaper advertisements are run in real estate ads and on Wednesdays in Louisiana Weekly and in the Times-Picayune New Orleans Advocate Wednesday edition. Now, here's some little advice tips from other people that bid. The bidders are only in competition with the people who are present at the auction. Nobody else is there. Nobody else other than the people there can bid. On the open market, hot or discounted properties usually have multiple offers. This isn't the same. The auction process that we have is transparent and open, and the highest bidder wins. And you have a chance sometimes to get properties at a highly discounted price. The bidding starts at 2/3 of the appraised value or at cost, depending. And at the beginning of each sale, pay close attention to the instructions from the auctioneer. Pay close attention to the descriptions of the property encumbrances. Make sure that you have that 10% that you're willing to put down in your possession, in hand. Can't be at home, can't be in the car. You have to have it with you. If you don't have it, we're going to turn around and start the bidding immediately again. And also make sure that you look each week to see the properties that are available for auction. Things you should do before you go bid: do your due diligence, visit the property, verify the address. Maybe you can make a time to go visit the property and look at the interior. Have a good idea of what the property is worth to you. Know what your maximum bid is before the auction starts, before you get caught up in the process. And make sure you have that 10% available in certified funds. And if you want to pay it as soon as possible, pay that balance. Make certain you can pay the balance in 30 days or less. Get legal advice. If you want, you can get insurance. Know how to get it renovated. Know about unexpected cost. Be aware that these properties might be subject to theft, vandalism. And familiarize yourself with eviction laws and owner and tenant rights. And know that we're going to record this deed before you have real ownership. And if someone's living in the property, they could have certain tenant rights. Some more tips. Visit the property all hours of the day. Go at day, go at night. If you can, talk to the neighbors to get a little information on the history of the property. If the property is on the market, make an appointment to view the property. You can also look up the property on the tax assessor's website. Visit NOLA.gov to see if any permits or code violation exist. Talk to a real estate agent. See if they have any information on the homes and the houses and the structures in that area. And if the property is occupied, understand that you might have to wait for an eviction. And remember, purchasing a property at the auction can be rewarding, but all bidding comes with a risk. And understand how much risk you want to tolerate before you bid on a property. The more properties you identify, the more properties that will fit your criteria, and the more properties you could bid on. Now I'm going to say a very little bit about tax sales, and I'm only going to say a very little bit because the Sheriff of Orleans Parish does not do the tax sales. The sheriff of other parishes do, but in Orleans Parish, the city of New Orleans conducts its own tax sales. In tax sales, there's a 3-year redemption period. So you have to hold that property for 3 years and then go into court and redeem it. And you're not purchasing all of the property, you're acquiring a percentage of the property. It creates a liability for the tax purchaser. You're required to file a lawsuit, as I said before, to obtain a court order to get 100% of the property. And then you have to file a lawsuit to quiet the title to ensure that you have clear title. But again, the Sheriff of New Orleans does not do tax sales. Now here's some friendly tips if you're experiencing foreclosure or foreclosure attempts and how you can prevent foreclosure. And the first one is pretty simple. Pay your mortgage note, pay it on time. Second, communicate with your mortgage holder if you can't. Maybe you can seek forbearance. Fourth, I'd say contact a lawyer when or even before a foreclosure suit is filed. And then sometimes you can get a third party to help you prevent a foreclosure sale. Someone in your family, a friend, someone who can help you pay off the bank before they go to a foreclosure sale. We have a website. Our website is www.opso.us, and you click under Civil Matters, Civil Division, Civil Matters Foreclosure, and it can tell you all of the upcoming sales and give you information on all of the properties that we have out there. We also have some frequently asked questions. Is there a redemption period on a city blighted property sale? No, there isn't. We talked about that for tax sales, but the Sheriff of Orleans Parish does not do tax sales. What happens if I bid on the wrong property? Please don't. It's going to cause a lot of problems for you. May you write a personal check or credit card at the sheriff's auction? No, that 10% has to be in the form of a certified check, cashier's check, or money order, or cash, but no personal checks at the auction. How do you know how much money to bring as a deposit? If you don't know the winning bid amount, you bring 10% of what you're prepared to bid based upon your due diligence, and make that check out to yourself, that certified check, cashier's check, or money order, or also cash. And we don't give change rather at the sale, but we'll apply that to the balance. Are you the owner after you put up the 10% at the auction? No, you're not the owner until the deed is recorded and you pay that 90%. Can you get the property insured after you put up your 10%? Yes, you could insure your 10% interest, probably better accomplished with the help of an independent insurance agent. What about insurance for city blighted properties? Probably less of an opportunity to get insurance on a blighted property. Does the federal tax lien outrank other liens? Not in the case of foreclosures, but there is an opportunity for the IRS to redeem over a 180-day period. Does the federal tax lien outrank the city judgment or the city seizure? In city blighted property cases, that answer has not been determined in a court of law. When do you get the sheriff's deed? You get that deed usually 4 to 6 weeks after you paid the 90% balance. And let me also point out that sometimes, not often, but rarely, the terms of the auction will say that you have to put 100% down. In that case, you have to come with 100% of what you're prepared to bid. That's another reason for you to read those auction advertisements and listen to the auctioneer very carefully. How can you find out the value of the property before the sale? Well, you can check, the neighborhood. You can check real estate websites, and you can also check the Orleans Parish Assessor's Office website for any assessment value. Thank you. We appreciate your interest. And if you have any questions, you can always go on the website, contact the sheriff's office, contact the civil division. Appreciated the opportunity to present this seminar, and look forward to seeing you in person. Thank you very much.